Good morning, Chair. It's now 10 o'clock and we're live on YouTube.
Good morning, all. I do hope everyone is well. Just let me get my computer running. Right.
I believe
Are we all...
Councillor Hollis and Councillor Helen Ann Smith.
Well, I have seen them this morning, so I've got no comprehension of their tardiness. Mike, just give me one moment, because we are unusually punctual anyway. In any case, we will start with the agenda. Mike, you can just announce if you're letting them into the meeting, I guess. I am missing a very close family friend's funeral this morning to be at Cabinet. So Betty, although I'm not there with you this morning, I'm still thinking of you. Mike, item 1, any apologies formally for absence, please?
No, Chairman, we've got no apologies for absence.
Okay, just 2 members running late. Okay. Cabinet, do I have any disclosable pecuniary or personal interests or non-disclosable pecuniary or other interests for any of the items on the agenda, please?
No one's indicating, Chair.
Don't see anyone, no. Okay, and then please, we will receive and approve as a correct record the minutes of the Cabinet meeting that was on the 1st of December 2020. If I can move those, can I have a seconder, please? Oh, everyone, thank you, Samantha. Any questions or points of clarification on the minutes only? I don't see anyone. All right, we'll move to accept those. All in favour, please. We are unanimous in that. If one of the Cabinet members could contact the missing deputy leader to put him on the...
He's just entered the room, Chair.
Thank you. And happily, 3 minutes, I think £10 a minute towards the chairman's charity. That's good. Thank you, Councillor Hollis, for that. Right, with your indulgence, Cabinet, I am going to rejig the order of the agenda, please, and bring items 10 and 11 with immediate discussion to accommodate Councillor Martin. And also, although obviously item 10 is subject to a lot of discussion, I'd like to get both of these items done by 10:30. So I'm going to cease talking at 10:25 for item 10. So Councillor Martin, would you like to bring in the environmental charter paper, please? It's pages 81 to 88 on everyone's agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, morning everybody. Thanks for rearranging that for me. Thank you. Well, obviously, I hope you've all had time to read this paper. This is an absolutely excellent paper. It just shows, it's a trophy piece really, and it shows the good work of the council in tandem with the councillors and the direction that we're going in. It's absolutely fantastic. The statistics are all in there. I'm not going to reiterate them for you. I hope you've all read it. Also, as well, we took a delay on the environmental charter to prove through white space that we could actually live up to the promises we made. We didn't want to be making false promises to the members of the public, and I think Ashfield residents are particularly scrutinising the council at the moment because of the COVID pandemic, and they're all at home wandering around the parks, walking the dogs. They can see every bit of litter going everywhere. The fantastic work of the environment team goes without saying. I challenge anyone in the country to have a better record for serving the public over this pandemic as Ashfield District Council has done in this last year. and it's only to be commended. All of the good work of the staff, even when their noses are to the wire, they still produce the services that the public expect. And of course, it goes without saying that the teams come in every single day. The bin men, I've always said, they're like badgers. You don't see them; they come and take your bins, and they've just excelled, absolutely fantastic. So the environmental charter sets out how that team and this council and the councillors supporting it will strive to maintain and probably achieve even greater levels than we have in the past. And in all my time as a councillor, I've never seen a paper as positive as this. So I'm quite happy to take questions on it. It speaks for itself. It's just a big round of applause to the whole team, councillors, council staff, and everybody that's involved with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. And if you're formally moving that paper, I'll second it. I think it's been a long time coming. In 2007, 8, those members who were present then, which I don't think was many, maybe Rachel was the only councillor who was on the council with me at the time. The council launched an environmental charter then, which although the council had the managing and operating partnership from the county council, so we did potholes and all those other things which now the administration at the county council are sadly responsible for. We made a set of really transparent, clear pledges to the public of Ashfield about timeframes, what they could expect from us, the level of cleanliness, the level of service. And we wrote a booklet that got sent to everybody. And of course, that was incredibly popular. And sadly, over the last 10 years, the council, changing administrations, decided not to have those targets. And I think this is exactly the time where public need to see where their council tax is spent, you know, how clean their parks are, how quickly they should be able to expect a needle picked up off the street. The public deserve that. You know, I think Ashfield Council punches massively above its weight. It's clear by the next council tax increase that Ashfield Council will run all of its services on about 8% of people's council tax, just 8%. It's 9% at the moment, but after the huge increases we're expecting from County Hall, it'll be 8%. And I still think the public deserve this paper, this document that tells them what they can expect from our authority. And Councillor Martin's right, our teams are stunningly good. Only yesterday, 100 days to the election, ironically, I was able to confirm that our team's environment and waste have agreed to do another big spring clean. That's on top of the Christmas clear up, the bag it campaigns they've got above and beyond, despite massive staff shortages there, because people across our teams have just rolled up their sleeves and moved from one department to the other to make sure that we can still dig graves, to make sure that we can still empty the bins. And I'm, for one, I'm damn proud of our teams in the environment section, because they have worked tirelessly. And as Carol and I did yesterday, a small video to our staff teams across the board, those frontline services keep getting our plaudits because they work so hard and so well, and it's so visible. Despite Councillor Martin saying they're nocturnal, you don't see them. I'm not sure about a badger being a good analogy, but all of our services, all of the support staff have been working so hard to make sure that those frontline staff can keep going and that all the support services can keep going. And I mean, we stand on the shoulders of some incredible members of staff. And I think it's worth putting on record that this environmental charter is a public facing document about a huge amount of work that goes behind. I think one of the other things that I'm really, really excited to announce to Cabinet is a change as part of this environmental charter from us about environmental crime enforcement. So it's become very clear over the last few months that some people are spoiling it for a minority. I've done a number of videos. I was out with Councillor Deakin a couple of weeks ago when we finally got the camera up on Welbeck Street. We did videos here and there where dog fouling and litter have got out of hand, and this council's taking it seriously. So, you know, in common with most other councils, our district has been suffering from incidences of littering, fly tipping, dog fouling, and it's a poor presentation of waste by commercial operators and domestic residents. So this has now become a key focus for our authority, and it's now identified through the corporate plan and this new environmental charter. environmental crime has become an emerging issue throughout the COVID pandemic, and it's a priority not just for residents, but for us, the administration. So in order to maximise the management of environmental crime at a time when demands are increasing on our services, I'm really delighted to announce that we will be partnering with a private contractor to support the council in delivering on this key priority. So a suitable, qualified contractor will provide uniformed enforcement officers and the necessary infrastructure in order to develop a dedicated new environmental enforcement team that the sole purpose of undertaking littering and dog fouling enforcement duties across Ashfield district. So an executive decision record, an EDR, is being produced and will be signed off by my Deputy Leader, Councillor Helen Smith, by the end of this month. And this will be a 12-month pilot scheme taking effect from the 1st of April this year. The private sector enforcement team will significantly increase the enforcement activity that is undertaken in relation to littering and dog fouling offences across our district. The team will be led by an environmental enforcement team leader and 4 new officers, and we anticipate that the service will be delivered at a zero cost to the council. 5 more members of staff at zero cost to our council, and we think it will potentially generate income as well through paid fixed penalty notices issued, and the team that we are working with saying that they will on average take 74 fixed penalty notices per week. So for people who have been moaning and groaning very rightly that our streets are getting dirtier and dirtier, we know who those few people are who keep spoiling it, who keep allowing their dogs to foul, who keep chucking something out of the car window when they're passing by. Woe betide you, because don't come crying to the council when you get a huge fine, because we are setting on a massive team. We've always tried to put pride back into our district, and there's always been that 1 or 2% of people who spoil it for everybody else. And now we've found a really good way, working with partners through our crime and disorder team, to set on these extra 5 members of staff that will be patrolling, and they will be fining every single person caught across this district, because we will be coming down on people very, very harshly, because everybody deserves to have clean streets and parks and town centres. And it's clear to me only the Ashfield Independents are going to take that seriously and deliver it. Lots of other people stand on Facebook and point and moan, but we're coming up with the policies that will actually deliver it, and will deliver it at zero cost to this council. So I'm very, very proud of the work that Councillor Martin's done with the environmental team. I'm very proud of the team over there and what will be happening with the Big Spring Clean and other events. And I'm equally proud of what Councillor Smith's now going to be able to do with the community protection team, bringing those 2 teams together to make sure that anybody treating our district with disrespect gets hit in the pocket just where they deserve. So if any other members want to speak, I commend this paper to you. Councillor Wilmot, please.
Yes, Leader, this is a priority that the people of Ashfield fully support, this environmental charter and performance. It makes our environment in Ashfield a priority, with a commitment to making Ashfield a cleaner and greener place to live, and making a priority to invest in our parks and green open spaces, and making our visible frontline services, which includes street cleaning, ground maintenance and refuge, a priority that is in this council's corporate plan. As Councillor Dodds has already said, it also includes in the charter environmental enforcement to tackle fly tipping, dog fouling, litter dropping, and tackling antisocial behaviour, a very important issue to the people of Ashfield. The charter has 8 priorities in the charter. All are seen as priorities for the people of Ashfield. Also in the charter is a performance scorecard and reporting arrangements, very important indeed. In the background, we have the pandemic to contend with, but I am told we have a robust business continuity plan which deals with problems that do occur. Chairman and Leader, this is an extremely important environmental charter that the people of Ashfield will be looking closely at over the next 12 months to see that we are doing the job correctly. And I know by the efforts that's put in by our staff that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other members wish to add any comments? I can't see any. Can't see any other members who wish to speak. Look, I think this is a great piece of work. I think I've waxed quite lyrical on it. Just the final thing to say is that we will, once it's got full approval, Catherine and the wonderful comms team will be drawing this up into an actual document. This is not just something that we intend to draw up that will sit on a shelf and gather dust. It's a real document. We'll have a real set of pledges and priorities in for every resident. And then we'll be working on ways of getting that document to every house. So every house in Ashfield can keep a copy and hold us to account on it, that we can make real pledges to them, and we'll be able to say, these are the timeframes you should expect from us, and they should be ambitious, and we want something better. And that people, for the first time ever, can hold their local representatives to properly to account and say, yeah, you did that thing that you promised. And I think that's absolutely what everybody deserves. So unless anybody has anything else, I'm dead proud to take this to the vote. I think it's one of the most exciting things we've done in 2 years since we got outright control of this council, and I'm very, very proud of it. So I can't see anybody indicating. I'm going to move to the vote. So all those in favour of accepting the recommendations, please. Councillor Hollis, we can't see your camera. A small saving grace for many of us. Thank you. We are unanimous in that. All right, then, with time just slightly on our side, I'll move to item 11, please, which is a slight change to the way public funerals will be held. That's pages 89 to 114. This is simply a technical paper to be presented by Councillor Martin, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So all of the details in the report, so I'm not going to reiterate what's in there. Basically, the recommendations are to approve the policy relating to public health funerals and under the Public Control of Diseases Act, and recommend that the Council approves, as part of the 21-22 annual budget report to the Council in March 21, a revised budget to accommodate this statutory responsibility, resulting in an additional budget of 9,100, giving a total annual budget of 15,000. This revised budget will be kept under review, with any required variation being brought back to the Cabinet for approval. So this is really a safety net for people who can't afford to bury their loved ones, or people who die without any money. And the Council has a corporate responsibility to look after those people. So I recommend that to the Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. If you are, where's up with my video? If you are formally moving that, I'll formally second it. Any questions or comments for either Councillor Martin or Teresa as the officer? Councillor Wilmot, please.
Yeah, just a quick one. It is essential that all residents of Ashfield get a send off when leaving this planet of ours. It is a shame that some people have no relatives or friends to take control of their funerals. So it is only right that this authority does take control of the situation and give that person a good send-off. I just noticed that the cost now of even a simple funeral is 2,200, and some of them go up to 5,600. I would like to see a breakdown of from some of the people who do our burials, because it does seem that the prices seem to be going up very, very strongly, and at a time like this, when a lot of families are getting really some terrible grievances and are grieving for a lot of people. I think they should make sure that that people are getting value for money. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Can't see anyone. Councillor Martin, do you need to summate at all, or shall we move to the vote?
No, I think we can move to the vote. I'm sure Teresa will be able to provide John with the information he needs.
Yes, it's a very standard paper that means that councils can do their responsibility largely if people pass away with no family or support at all, so that they make sure that they're taken care of Don't worry, John, we've planned yours out very well. We love you really, John. Right. If there's no other comments or questions, I'll move to the vote then, please. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations? And we are unanimous, Lynn, in that. Thank you. Thank you, members, for accepting me moving the agenda around. So we'll now go back to the normal running order, which is item 4, which is the COVID-19 response and recovery scrutiny panel verbal update from our team there. But before we do that, I'd just like to add a couple of comments of my own on where the council is with COVID-19 and just update you on the latest situation. So obviously, since the last cabinet meeting, we've gone into a third national lockdown. And I'd like to thank the vast majority of residents in Ashfield district for following the lockdown rules. We know how frustrating it is, and I thank each and every one of our residents for playing their part in working together to beat this virus. The amount of positive coronavirus tests in Ashfield remains a huge cause for concern. Public Health England's daily dashboard shows that there were 432 new cases across the city and county on Monday, the 24th of January. Of these, 58 were recorded in Ashfield district, and that brings the total number of recorded cases in our district to 7,321 since the pandemic began, and it's the highest number in the county by over 1,000. Although happily there has been a 17% reduction in cases compared to the week before. Apart from a few teething problems, the vaccination programme at Ashfield Health Village and Kingsmill Hospital's going well. All residents in the district over 80 have now received their appointment letters, and they are starting to go out in what the NHS called cohort 2, which is 75 to 80-year-olds, which will catch quite a few of our councillors, I think, as well. I know there was problems on Friday night after a slight delay, but this was resolved by Saturday afternoon. So I'd like to thank the councillors in this district and our customer services team at ADC for assisting hundreds of residents. We were inundated with calls from residents after they couldn't get through to the NHS vaccination centre. And I'd like to mention in particular Councillor Lee Waters, who booked a 92-year-old lady in from Hucknall for appointment by doing it over the phone with her online. As we know, these problems will now be resolved because from today, the County Council's golden number becomes a largely catch-all phone number for anybody who's got any sort of questions or comments or queries, worries about COVID that aren't directly about booking the vaccine. So hopefully that'll take a lot of pressure over the phone, off of the phone lines generally. Cabinet, we've also had some really good news with regards to the lack of a vaccination centre in Hucknall as a result of some intense lobbying from Hucknall's Ashfield Independent Councillors and our COVID-19 Response and Recovery Committee. I'm delighted to announce this morning that the Clinical Commissioning Group are addressing the lack of a vaccination centre in Hucknall. Hucknall's now been escalated to the National Vaccination Programme team. The CCG group are currently working with the NHS on immediate options, and that includes the logistics of a vaccination centre in the heart of Hucknall. And we're expecting a decision by the end of this week, and we'll update members accordingly. So anyone that called ADC's COVID-19 panel jobs for the boys looks a bit stupid this morning. I'm thinking of a couple of people in Hucknall particularly, because that is exactly why we set up this panel, to identify problems and deliver solutions by working with local members. Also, members, our council officers continue to work solidly to provide the services residents deserve. As I said in the earlier item, Ashfield District Council remained the only council to have provided full bin collection services throughout the pandemic. And I'd like to thank all of our officers who joined the waste collection team to cover for staff suffering from COVID or having to self-isolate. And I'd also like to formally wish the waste management team good luck in the Keep Britain Tidy Awards at the start of February. If any team deserves to win, it's Ashfield District Council. It's not a competition though, however, because the residents of Ashfield have already won by having such a good team working for them. And Talking of winning teams, despite a few businesses starting to panic that they've not had it, I really want to thank our revenues and benefits team led by Pete Hudson, because they've done an amazing job and continue to do an amazing job getting businesses their grants out and speedily. Grants continue to be paid to traders and retailers affected by COVID as fast as they can. A number of retailers have been in touch now to thank us, and I'd like to pass that thanks on to Pete and the team. And I'm also proud, Cabinet, that at the end of play yesterday, that team has paid out £3.438 million to 395 businesses with a rateable value, and another £126,000 to 88 businesses without a rateable value. It's a remarkable achievement, and you know, we need to thank our brilliant team for showing support to businesses, retailers, our pubs, our restaurants, all of the businesses affected by the third national lockdown. I could go on and on like I normally do, but I'm keen to make progress. So a thank you to all the Ashfield family. You are doing us proud. Right at the start of this pandemic in March last year, I said to our Chief Executive, Carol Cooper-Smith, how are we going to get through this? But you know what? We are doing it in spades. And I'm not sure if it was Carol or Councillor Hennigan who reminded me of the quote by Audrey Hepburn, which those of you know I love films, so I can't remember who it was, but Audrey Hepburn said, how are we going to do this? It's impossible. And she said, of course it's possible. Even the word spells I'm possible. So I can't remember who told me that, but Ashfield District Council is certainly making the impossible possible. So thank you all for indulging me on that. And I'll hand over to is it Councillor Hennigan or Councillor Blagden who's going to start the verbal report for us?
Thank you, thank you, Leader, and good morning, Cabinet. And can I be the first person to wish you all Happy New Year? And I'm going to wish people Happy New Year right through to the middle of February this year, just to squeeze an extra few weeks about from it. Jason, you mentioned the magic number that's that the County Council are assisting the NHS with. And I just wanted to mention to members and anyone watching online that number is 0300 500 8080. That's 0300 500 8080. So anyone listening today or members or officers, if people call, we could do with mentioning that to the customer service team as well, maybe in a message of the day, that if they are struggling to get through to the NHS line to book an appointment, then to ring that number. So before I go on, I'd just like to bring in my vice chair, or as I call him now, my Ashfield dad, because I speak to him more than I do my actual dad, Councillor Jim Blagden, who's going to speak about the meeting on, I think it was December the 12th. Councillor Blagden.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Leader. Once again, giving us this opportunity to feed directly into the Cabinet, it really is a good opportunity for us. I was a bit concerned, our Leader, at the start of the meeting, I must say. When you moved Councillor Martin up to the first on the agenda, with his backdrop, I thought he was going to lead us in a rendition of "With Clouder Fields and Scatter." At least it didn't happen. Leader, we're asking you for this morning to note the Council's ongoing response to the COVID-19 pandemic, its developing recovery programme and the operational response from the police as outlined on page 3 to 6 of the report. The last time the COVID-19 response and recovery panel met was on Thursday the 10th of December, and it feels like at least a year away. As ever, all members of the panel heavily contributed, and no less than 9 officers attended, which is absolutely brilliant. All members of the panel are grateful for the ongoing support of all our senior officers at the Council. At the meeting in December, we were pleased to welcome Inspector Mark Dixon, the Operational Commander for Ashfield District. Inspector Dixon started on his role in May and has made a huge impact on policing in the district. As you will see from the report, he spoke about many of the challenges his force has faced during the ongoing pandemic. Reports of antisocial behaviour went up 35.1% in March to November 2020. compared to the same period in 2019. This is according to figures released by Nottinghamshire Police. Inspector Dixon said that majority of the rise was due to COVID complaints. I know that Councillor Ellen Smith asked for a breakdown of this figure in December's meeting of Nottinghamshire Police and Crime Panel. This has put an enormous strain on policing, already overstretched. The police really had to prioritise due to the rise in domestic violence and violence linked to substance abuse. As a direct result of issues raised by the panel, extra police patrols and operations were carried out on the Papplewick Green Estate, Hucknall, areas in Sutton, areas in Kirkby, Kingsway Park, Jacksdale and Underwood. These were complaints, whilst not linked explicitly to COVID-19, were certainly exasperated by it. Another result of the meeting is that Mr. Dixon has agreed to partake in 4 separate meetings. These will be with councillors in Hucknall, Kirkby, Sutton and the Rurals. This will be for Inspector Dixon to introduce himself to discuss COVID-19 issues related to localities and wider policing issues in our patches. Inspector Dixon spoke about the advantages of the police hub based in ADC in Kirkby, working side by side with the CPOs and our new COVID information team, our environmental health team, and officers, including our community protection team. This certainly vindicated the decision of this administration to increase the size of their accommodation. He even spoke fondly about the time the force took, and I'm going to, Teresa Hodgkinson on patrol. He said they couldn't work out who the criminals were more frightened of, the operational Reacher team or Teresa. Overall, this was a hugely positive part of the meeting. I think the recommendations that came from it are that multi-partnership working is effective and we should continue to work together towards a safer Ashfield district. The second part of the meeting was a chance to finally meet Ian Rotherham, the Senior Code Information Officer. Councillor Hennigan and I worked very close with Ian and Trevor Middleton and the team. You will see to concentrate on traders in our 3 town centres. They listened. They are visiting with traders in every part of our district, including places like Annesley, Huffwaite, Jacksdale, Papplewick Green, Hucknall, Underwood, Selston, Skegby, Stanton Hill. Their common sense style has been welcomed overwhelmingly by retailers. They are working on various projects this week. This includes visiting small business units with click and collect information, QR codes for their premises to help track and trace, much more. We are pleased to welcome Pete Hudson, our Corporate Finance Manager, Section 151 Officer. I think that 151 stands for the amount of hours of sleep that Peter has not had since March. The outstanding work of his team was highlighted by the panel, something as a leader said at the start of this meeting. He has continued to lead in spades. Thank you, Leader. If it's so, I'll pass back to Dave.
Thanks, Councillor Blagden, and that was an excellent précis of our December meeting, and all members were left empowered, informed, and more importantly, felt as though they had been listened to. An example of that being the increased police patrols in their area that happened between December the 12th and Christmas. Can I add to that list, Councillor Blagden, the Carsick estate, because it's something that Councillor Smallridge raised with the inspector as well. So just to mention that. But again, it just goes to show that these people do listen to us when we make the case. When this committee was first set up, we knew there was a lot of work to be done in between meetings. I speak regularly with all officers about various issues connected to COVID, almost on a daily basis. We also deal with a clinical commissioning group the local resilience partnership, the police, and other organisations. And the news, as Councillor Zadrozny, you stole my thunder there, Councillor Zadrozny, the news that the need for a vaccination centre in Hucknall has been elevated to national NHS level is absolute proof of that. And to be fair, Jim, it will keep Councillor Wilmot off our back for a few days, but only for a few days.
Yeah.
One of the first issues that members of the panel raised when we set this up was the importance of being kept in the loop. Catherine Green and the comms team produced an excellent questions and answer email to members on a regular basis. The panel, the COVID panel, also produces a very brief, and I say brief, COVID update intermittently. We're up to 16 now, and these aim to complement the work of the comms team and to assist members with the knowledge about what's going on. One of the, as I say, one of the first issues that, going back, sorry, I'm losing myself there. Going back to our COVID report, we worked very hard to crunch the numbers so that members understand the severity of the situation. I think I've been on the .gov.uk website more times in the past 12 months than Guardian Politics. That's my usual website choice, but I'm not political. This, I'm afraid, is sometimes depressing reading. Middle super output areas, you might have seen that being mentioned, how the NHS measures statistics. They're like electoral wards times 2, maybe 2.5, so usually between 5,000 and 6,000 people. What this allows us to do is measure the figures as locally as possible. What they show are the wild swings that COVID brings. I'll give you an example. I have 2 middle super output areas in my ward in Sutton. The one that's brought the most concern is Central, Sutton and Leamington. And to give you an example of swings that would make Tiger Woods proud, back in December, positive coronavirus figures for this area was suppressed. What that basically means is that the figures were virtually nothing. The figure was that negligible, they couldn't even record one. Great news, you know, Nottingham posted a big article on it. Brilliant. We told people at the time not to be complacent. Fast forward just 3 weeks later, and after Christmas, they'd gone through the absolute roof with the highest figures in the county by a mile. And we're talking more than 1 in 100 people being diagnosed with a positive coronavirus test. Other areas that have seen massive spikes include Kingsway, Kirkby and Larwood, Hucknall, Selston, and Sutton, Forest Side and New Cross. We've got to keep using our positions, members, Cabinet, to warn residents to stay safe and not be complacent. And the panel will continue pressing the CCG to ensure that after these asymptomatic testing pilots in Mansfield and Warsaw areas and Sutton and next, I think we've really got the case. And I know that this is something that Councillors Martin and Zadrozny are pushing for in County Hall. And the reason I say that is because on November the 6th, the Secretary of State for Health announced that the whole of Nottinghamshire was going to have mass asymptomatic testing. We all thought, great, similar to the Liverpool pilot. Well, it's been over 10 weeks and we're still waiting. All they can come up with is 2 pilots in Mansfield and Warsaw. And we're not saying that they don't deserve to have pilots, don't get me wrong, that's not fair. But what we're saying is we need to work together as a council to make the case for where areas, like for example, the super output areas of Forest Side and New Cross and Central Sutton and Leamington have asymptomatic testing too, because I'm not 100% confident walking around Sutton that a lot of people are being tested. But anyway, that's something that Jim and I are working on, and we'll be reporting back to the panel. I've got to say, Cabinet, that when we met in March last year, do you remember, I think it was about March the 12th, March the 13th, when we met on a dull day in the council chamber, and Jason was talking and Carol was talking and officers were talking about this potential pandemic. And of course, no one particularly, we all, oh yeah, it may or may not happen. And of course, it's been worse than we thought. And by the way, the Audrey Hepburn quote must have come from Carol, because it didn't come from me, just to point that out. But at that meeting, I identified comms as key, absolute key to the job that this council are doing. And our team of Catherine Green, Richard Crosland and Abby Smith have played an absolute blinder. And I've been in this game 20 years. I understand these things. So much so that I was speaking to a senior official at County Hall and an avid reader of the Nottingham Post. And he remarked in September that reading the Post, it would appear that Ashfield District Council were the only council in the county who were actually bothering to do anything at all about the pandemic. And so thank you to Catherine and the team for the superb job you've been doing. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm sure all Cabinet share that. Now, as a COVID panel, we assist with this. At our meeting in October, we agreed to work hard to promote local retailers and the media. And so far, we've generated 15 stories of all shapes and sizes. So, for example, the plight of wet-led pubs like Speed the Plough in Sutton and the Oasis Bar in Sutton. We've done stuff about, we've had a major story about a factory in Huffway employing 120 locals and spending 75,000 on PPE equipment. That bill's probably hit 100,000 now. We've had a story on 2-hour free parking in our town centre car parks. We've had a story about high street recovery, one about a barber shop in Kirkby, a food bank in Sutton and Ashfield, and much more. So we've worked hard to complement the work of the comms team. And we've even had a story in the Daily Mirror promoting the hard work that the Ashfield District Council are doing. So it's, Councillor Blagden talked about partnership work, and that's certainly a good example. One of the things that shines through everything we do as a council, and it's certainly been noticeable during this pandemic, is that this council cares. And that should always be, when anybody gets, whether it be you go into local politics or whether you work in the public sector, that should always be your starting point, that you care. And it's clearly the motivational driver that makes the services we deliver outstanding. And I just wanted to flag up something, because I think this needs to be raised at the highest level. Late on Tuesday, the 29th of December, we received reports about a man living in a tent in Aldi car park in Kirkby, next door. I was going to say next door there, I'm pointing that way, but I'm actually pointing at Sutton Lawn there, but you know what I mean. The night was freezing and we needed to take action. And, the housing team don't get credit, like, for example, the waste management team, but Paul Parkinson's housing team were absolutely outstanding. Phil Warrington was on leave, but he answered my call. This gentleman was living on our streets because of mental health issues, and they were clearly exacerbated by COVID lockdown. And we made sure he was warm enough for the night. And you know what? By the first thing in the morning, Phil and his duty officers had coordinated everything, and he was in the YMCA in Hucknall hours later. And that's a credit to the housing team at this council. It's another example of officers going way and above the call of duty. Paul, if you could pass my thanks on to Phil and the team. In a muted Christmas silenced by COVID, your team made a difference in this man's life. You probably saved his life. So thank you. It's getting emotional there. I'll move on to the next bit. It won't be long, by the way. I know that you're discussing the future High Streets fund for Sutton late in the agenda. But as our committee are also looking at recovery, I'm going to throw my 2 pennies within now, if that's okay. Well, it won't be long. Bear with me. Very good with technology. The £6.27 million we're awarded to kickstart the Sutton Town Centre regeneration is a win-win for officers at this council. Officers like Teresa Hodgkinson, Sarah Daniel, Carol Cooper-Smith, Andrea Stone and the rest. It's a win for councillors like yourselves, the Cabinet, the whole council. I'd like to particularly single out Councillor Matthew Ralph, who led on this on members' behalf. The presentation he gave to all Sutton and Kirkby councillors in December about our regeneration plans was brimming full of ambition, and I know the future of our towns are safe when we have people like Matt working with officers. So thank you very much, Matt. And as a Sutton councillor, it was a great start to the year. And maybe, Matt, you'll forgive me for ringing you up about 7:45 on Boxing Day and waking you up. Apologise for that. Nearly finished now. It was a massive win as well. So I've mentioned the councillors, I've mentioned the officers, but it was also a massive win for the hundreds of residents who got involved in the consultation. I think it was the biggest response the council has had since it was set up in 1974. This was a massive win for the people. It was a collective effort and not anything to do, to be honest, with a mendacious Tory MP who deliberately tried to wreck it all. Like a football hooligan claiming credit for his team winning, you just couldn't make it up. Anyway, I'll move on. I wish you well with the Towns Fund bid, and our panel will chip in any way we can. Just like to put a plug in and for you all to join our panel next week, as one of our guests is Richard Mitchell. Richard Mitchell is the boss of Kingsmill Hospital, and our panel will be celebrating and acknowledging the work of our wonderful NHS staff. Many of their 5,500 staff live in Ashfield. Already residents are getting in touch with touching stories about how our staff at our hospital saved lives. It'd be like Pride of Britain, but just on Zoom. Thank you, panel. As ever, we'd like to thank our staff at Committee Services, Mike Joy, Lynn Kane and Shane Wright. For such a small team, the hard work, attention to detail and dedication shines through in these accurate, as I like to say, Hansard-esque reports. So thank you, Committee Services team. Thank you, Leader. Both Councillor Blagden and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have. And that's our COVID report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hennigan, for your brevity.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith. This is what happens when you upset Mike. He don't want you to speak. You're still muted.
Right, I'm done now. Just to come on to a point that Councillor Blagden made with regards to the ASB incidents. I have got the breakdown now from Chief Inspector O'Neill of ASB and COVID-related ASB for the year to date. And in Ashfield, the main one, the COVID-related, was 1,165. Neighbour disputes was 909. Nuisance was 908. Youth-related ASB was 456. Vehicle was 350. Noise was 254. Drugs was 105. Traveller-related ASB was 6. And the last column just says NA is number 9. So obviously something that doesn't fall into any of the above categories.
Not applicable.
What was the period, Helen, of that again?
It says year to date on the report. So it would have been, this meeting was last week, so it would have been compared year to year last week.
Thank you for that. Who else?
Councillor Hollis has had his hand up, Chair, for a while.
What are you seeing, Mike? Because he's just messaged me about that, and I'm not sure if that's a legacy hand, but I can't see hands up like Teams.
He's used the button to put his hand up, which creates a little blue icon in the screen.
Just for everybody who's actually part of this meeting, I'm not seeing any of that, so I'm not able to chair accurately. So if you want to speak, put your camera on and wave your hand instead of hiding in the darkness. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. I like the old school, so we'll make sure we do the hand waving in person. I'm sure we'll be back in in-person meetings, I hope, before long, so you can see us in person.
The Conservative government have found time to legislate against campaigning because they're terrified of being destroyed at the county council elections, but they've not found time to allow us to continue with hybrid meetings that will.
Well, that's not a surprise.
Safe, so I'm sure you're correct in that, but that's because of the buffoonery on Downing Street. Ably abetted by the equal buffoon that for us.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Leader, I wouldn't profess to comment on that, but I will note the slight surprise in both your and I's in tray this morning, receiving a letter from Chief Whip of the government, of course, an MP for our district, the first and only letter our administration's received from him, and that was to instruct our political party of the rules not to leaflet. I note that he never wrote us a letter about HS2, crime, Hucknall Sound Centre projects, the spring clean, and all the other things that we've been doing, and would like his partnership with. And I think it just shows a little bit of a upset that they've chosen to do that. But turning to my comments on this agenda item, Leader, I think it's an absolutely fabulous job what the council have done with regards to our COVID response, keeping town centres informed, shaping the council's agenda with things like free parking, hand sanitisers, the fact that we've paid the grants to businesses and supported as many as we possibly can. And I think turning to comments, which I would have liked to have made a few comments on the environmental charter earlier, just to say really this is all part of the same kind of partnership and working in the fact that COVID has been a tough time. Our council has had to adapt on whether it be staff shortages, whether it be extra pressures, all sorts of things from all different angles. Yet we've stepped up to the plate. No better so than in the environmental sector, particularly things like waste collection and street cleaning. And Leader, you'll be aware that our council was the only council in the East and West Midlands to continue all bin and frontline services that the council provide. No surprise that our council is run by local people and independents, not a political party. And then the second thing is, not only did we just do what everybody else normally would want to do, we did extra with the spring cleans. And Leader, you'll be aware that I represent Huthwaite and Carsick. Many people in my own council area don't drive. Even the ones that do have felt uncomfortable to go to the skips. So things like the spring clean that we've been able to continue with, that of course, as part of the COVID response, has really helped people stay safe and keep the district clean. So it's really a fabulous thing. And I suppose the other thing that I'd thank Councillor Hennigan and yourself as Leader with the advice is the free parking and the hand sanitisers. You know, I think at a time when businesses are struggling, you know, we did need to make sure that the town centres were accessible for the businesses that are doing takeaways and are providing essential products. But also going forward, obviously the rolling out of the 2 hours free parking will hopefully allow these businesses, once they are allowed to get back open, the chance to frankly get the footfall that they'll need and the business back through. So I think members won't be surprised to hear me say how proud I am of this council's leadership, and not only the council members but also the council officers and the hard and diligent work they've done through frankly tough times professionally and no doubt personally. So it's a real testament, I think, to the character of people who were part of Ashfield District Council, Leader. But no, that's everything. And just a final thank you to, like I say again, as part of this report, to Councillor Hennigan and Councillor Blagden for their comprehensive reporting, which I think shines far and beyond, despite the significant gap in resources of the County Council's COVID Response Committee. So I think they should be very proud of the work they've done. Thank you.
Councillor Wilmot.
Yes, Leader. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity. I mean, it's now 12 months since the terrible pandemic first came onto the scene, and I'd like to thank Craig Bonner and his and the CLT team, and Councillor Hennigan and Bragdon, and of course the Response and Recovery Scrutiny Panel, also Pete Hudson and all the other officers for the tremendous work in this very, very difficult times. They've absolutely been outstanding in the whole situation. Leader, I think this is probably the most serious set of figures that in my whole career as a councillor at Ashfield I've had to listen to. It shows in Ashfield from the 7 days to the 9th of January, we have the most recorded cases of COVID-19 in Nottinghamshire. Although it shows cases in Ashfield stabilising now, we still have the most cases recorded in the area. And digging deeper, we find that we have 4 out of the top 6 wards topping the table in Nottinghamshire, with Sutton Central and Leamington leading the way with 85 new cases. I can only say to everyone, please, please follow the guidelines set out by the authorities, and let's beat this pandemic, and do not rely on the vaccine. And going over to talking of the vaccine, I was astounded when Hucknall was left out of not having a station for this vaccine originally. So I do welcome greatly that they're now thinking about it. And also about a new surgery that's most essential in Hucknall. We've got Topwiggy Farm, 900 houses. We've got Rolls-Royce, the same sort of amount. We've got many areas filling with new properties in Hucknall, and yet we still are waiting for a top surgery with the necessary equipment to be able to sort out over 30,000, many thousands of people coming in also into the area. I'm a little bit perturbed about this whole situation, and I think that Hucknall's been left out in many cases for far too long on these situations. On the positive side, we're again ahead of the game on business support, and the application forms are already online, and this is good to see. We hope to be processing payments shortly. As far as the vaccination programme is concerned, it seems to be going well, although some of the 80-year-olds have not received their date to be vaccinated. And of course, we've got the problem of the 80-year-olds who need transport. I know that it's been put in around that transport is available, but this shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds thinking about transport for this situation. It should never have arisen. Well, of course, we're being reassured now that everybody is getting a letter before the end of this month, and I hope that problems with transport will be not a problem in the end. I would like to take the opportunity of thanking all the officers of this council for all the hard work it is going on, especially the ones that are out in the community, including the environmental health officers, the COVID information officers, the housing officers, the environmental officers, including the bin operatives, the licensing team, and everyone else that is working outside under difficult conditions. Leader, they are a credit to this authority. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anybody else? Any questions or points? Councillor, do you wish to summate?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And just on the point of Mark Spencer, it's ironic, John, that you mentioned Mark Spencer because I actually wrote to Mark Spencer last year about the desperate need for a doctor's surgery, a new doctor's surgery, and asked him to contact the CCG, and he ignored me. I don't know, he's having a competition to see who's the worst MP for Hucknall. Is it Ben Bradley or is it Mark Spencer? And I've been here before, you know, when Tony Blair was the MP for Sedgefield in the North East, never used to do anything for his local area. I'm afraid that we've got an MP that is more interested in what goes on in the Westminster bubble than actually what goes on in Hucknall. So I'm surprised that Mr. Spencer has taken an interest and written to him, but I do await to see the legislation. With regards to transport, John, again, it's something that we've looked at, and we've been speaking to the CCG about. They do say that it does make it clear on the letter that you can book your local transport. But I was having a conversation with one of the leading figures of the CCG last week, on Friday, when we first started getting calls, because I know you were inundated, John, weren't you? I think quite a few of your ex-girlfriends got onto you, the over 80s. But I can confirm, as Jason said at the start of this meeting, that all over 80s have now, they're cohort one. So they've all had their letters now, John, and they can book their transport when they book their appointment. And you know, I have said to the CCG that we need to do something clear, and they promised to improve the communications. I think it's a good 30% of 75 to 80-year-olds have already received their letters as well. and we shall certainly do our bit. And I was wondering whether Catherine and the comms team could maybe give us a lift and get some messages out via our social media channels, just letting people know. And I'll forward you the email, Catherine, shortly, which gives a précis. I wouldn't say it's about as a précis as my précis. It's quite long, but basically it sets out exactly what they need to do. But I did have this conversation last week because the CCG was saying, well, if they can't get through, they could always email me. I was like, okay, Elsie, all right, councillor, all you need to do is you need to email. What's an email? I said, you're better off with the carrier pigeon or something like that. But they have said that they're going to improve communication. But so I repeat to members that the COVID panel is good fun. When I say good fun, I quite enjoy meetings. Probably the meeting I enjoyed most last year was a personnel committee in December. I'm probably the most boring person I know. But seriously, on February the 2nd, so this time next week, it kicks off at 7 o'clock. And yet, feel free to chip in. All you need to do is ask Mike, Shane, or Lynn for the Teams code, because it is our opportunity to thank our local NHS. And as I said before, there is 5,500 staff that work at Kingsmill Hospital, and we can't thank them enough. My phone's been going beep 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 because I've shared Catherine's post that she put up yesterday, inviting residents to tell us what they think of the NHS. And I've never quite seen the word thank you. Just a lot of people thank you, and we're getting loads and loads and loads more. Obviously, we're not going to be able to read them all out, but we'll try and get as many as we can on the council website. And Jim and I are going to artwork something nice up that we can present when we got put all the messages in one file, and then we can present them to Kingsmill Hospital. But Richard Mitchell and the staff have done an amazing job under some of the most serious circumstances possible. And it's great to stand on our doorstep and clap them. I said that the government should give them a pay rise, and let's hope that happens. But next Tuesday is our opportunity to say thank you. So I invite you to join us, and thank you very much. And thank you again to the officers for your support of everything that the COVID recovery and response panel do. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Dave. Just I think as well, just before we round off this item, it's probably worth we do thank the officers, rightly so, for all the work they've done. But over the last couple of weeks, since the 5th when we went into lockdown, obviously our members switched from campaigning, despite Mark Spencer's protestations, because he knows he's about to lose 3 county councillors in his constituency to the Ashfield Independents. Our teams switched fast to doing welfare calls and checks for people to make sure that they were able to get prescriptions and food parcels. And our team have done some incredible work. The councillors have flagged up all sorts of issues. Our CPOs, as people have said, have been ready at the pumps. They've done a couple of very serious welfare checks. One where when one of our callers found that somebody that they thought had passed away, they were out immediately to help. And there's a couple where we've raised social services cases. And I think last Friday, Councillor Deakin, Councillor Hollis, when we had a call from the Briley Medical Centre in Huthwaite that said they'd got half a dozen vials of vaccination ready to go, but that were running out that day, but they couldn't get more people to the centre. Gave us a list of their patients to collect, and our councillors were out ferrying patients to and from Briley Medical Centre, and I can confirm that Councillor Deakin got the last person there that afternoon. That meant not one vaccination was wasted, not one. We got that many people there that day. Rachel, I remember phoning one guy who just said he was panicking about it. We managed to ship him over. So this sort of teamwork between members and the council pulling together at that time has been great. And Samantha, who is modest, so she's not even got a camera on, is one of the ones, before we all start calling every morning, is there quickly doing a shopping run at Asda for somebody, or picking up prescriptions or something. The way that councillors and officers have pulled together through this crisis, even more so I think this last time, has been incredible, and not many people there seek any of the limelight out of it, but I think they deserve our commendation, staff and members alike, for the work they've been doing. Right, so I'm going to move on to item 5, which is the corporate plan performance. It's April to September 2020, so in the eye of the storm. It's pages 13 to 24 on your paperwork. And I think I'll ask Joe if you wouldn't mind just reading out some of the highlights. The report's in my name, but Joe's compiled all the data work, and thank you for that, Joe. But if you'd like to read to members what is actually a very, very good report, some of the highlights, I'd appreciate that, Joe.
No worries, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report presents to Cabinet it's an update on corporate plan performance, and it's for Q2, April to September last year. But also the report picks up where relevant any updates regarding the impact of the pandemic and our continued provision of services, which we've discussed through quite a few of the other reports to Cabinet this morning. I don't particularly want to go into a lot of detail and repeat some of the things that have already been mentioned, but just that the report sort of highlights that despite the pandemic, we measure our progress of the corporate plan through two things, through both the corporate scorecard, which is a set of performance measures, but also our project management framework. So we measure the delivery of projects and actions, improvement activity, which are all aligned to our corporate priorities. So in terms of measuring across the corporate scorecard, despite the impacts of the pandemic, from April to September, 71% of our measures either achieved or exceeded target or were within 10% of target, which is absolutely brilliant. And 61% of the measures in the scorecard actually improved compared to the same period in the previous year, or were within 5% of those previous year's performance levels, again, which is absolutely brilliant. The report, as you've mentioned, Leader, does go into quite a lot of detail. It's aligned to our corporate priorities. There's a lot in there in relation to the positive things that we've been able to deliver throughout the pandemic. For example, progressing the Kirkby Leisure Centre, so works, sort of the tendered progress has been made and works are due to commence on site this month. And also the Ashfield Community Fund, the amounts of funds that we've made available across voluntary organisations across the district. In terms of housing and homes, 35% more households have been prevented from becoming homeless between April and September throughout the pandemic. And the significant amount of work that has been undertaken in our housing repairs team in terms of delivering emergency repairs, and also some of the regulatory requirements that we need to adhere to in terms of undertaking gas safety checks have all been completed despite the impact of the pandemic. If we move on to economic growth and place priority, significant success with the being awarded over £6.2 million for our Future High Streets bid for Sutton, and also the ongoing work in terms of the Kirkby and Sutton Towns funding projects. And as has already been mentioned, the significant support that's been put in place to support high street businesses through the employment of COVID information officers since October. If I move on to cleaner and greener, we've seen reductions in levels of incidents that are reported by residents of dog fouling and litter. And as we've mentioned in the first report to Cabinet this morning in regards to the Environmental Charter, we're actually increasing our enforcement activity as well. And we've seen an increase of enforcement and the number of fines and warnings that have been issued. If I move on to safer and stronger, again, the the level of work that has been undertaken by our teams in responding to incidents of antisocial behaviour and nuisance, which has resulted in a high volume of enforcement activity, including prosecutions, injunctions and other enforcement activity. And then finally, our innovate and improve priority. We've seen increasing levels of online payments through our e-store, which now has over 160 different sort of payments that you can pay for through that electronic store. And corresponding to that, we've actually seen a 9% reduction in PayPoint and post office payments, which actually helps the council to realise efficiencies in that regard due to a reduction in transaction costs. And as has already been mentioned, the amount of grants that we paid out to support businesses throughout the pandemic is also mentioned in the report. The data that is in the report is up to end of December, and we've had further updates on that already mentioned this morning. And then also just want to finish off with the during this period, we actually launched a brand new website, which is a new, modern, more user-friendly website, which is also fully accredited by the Shaw Trust, which means that we not only meet the minimum standards of web accessibility standards, but we exceed that. And we've looked at measures of how well that new website's working over the last 3 months. I mean, it's already indicating significant improvements in terms of the customer journey and ease of access to information. So that's a really big success. The report finally does go into just a few areas where we've not seen improvement compared to the same period last year. And the report does mention those that relate to what we call our critical functions. And in the main, these are impacted by the pandemic. So the report does mention business rates collection, which has obviously been impacted by the pandemic and the impact on businesses that have either been forced to close or been significantly affected by the pandemic. The impact on collecting rent as well. So our levels of current tenant rent arrears has increased considerably. Some of our tenants have faced considerable challenges during the pandemic in terms of financial circumstances and their ability to pay rent. We're continuing to offer welfare and money management advice and support to those tenants. And then finally, the time taken to relet our void properties, so properties that have become vacant, has increased. That was particularly impacted during the first lockdown when those voids that require major works to be undertaken in them, which requires contractors, subcontracting support to do that, was particularly impacted during the first quarter of this financial year when we're in the first lockdown. However, in the second quarter and onwards to the end of December, we're actually seeing that the void turnaround is now improving. So overall, that's sort of in a nutshell, overall, a significantly successful position in terms of delivering against corporate plan and our priorities for the district.
Thank you, Jo. Really appreciate you compiling all that work. I think it just goes to show that all the waxing lyrical we've been doing over the earlier items is actually entirely based in fact. You know, despite COVID, despite the challenges that the council's been faced with financial and human resource wise, we are clearly punching above our weight and our teams are doing a fantastic job. So with that, I'll throw this paper open. I'll formally move it and throw it open to members for any questions or comments. Councillor Wilmot, please.
Thanks, Leader. First of all, I'd like to give my thanks to Jo for an excellent report, a report that she's not missed out any of the things about any of the divisions in the authority. And even when the COVID-19 continues to tragically decimate many lives within our community, this council has battled on to deliver a significant level of service provision. As we continue to have successful delivery of key projects and it is noted that we continue to improve performance against the corporate scorecard. It has been a great privilege to be a representative of this authority that has delivered all Tier 1 and 2 vital services without interruption during this serious COVID-19 pandemic. And I am sure all of you would like to congratulate all the staff for moving about the divisions and delivering vital services outside of their normal duties, and also helping the elderly and vulnerable with vital supplies, and helping many residents and businesses whenever they have been needed. Looking at the corporate scorecard, what Joe has already said, it is good to see, even with the COVID-19 to contend with, we've achieved 71% of the measures set out have achieved or improved target, and a staggering 81% of the measures have improved since the same period last year. Looking at the divisions within the council, it is good to see that we continue to move on with our priorities, with regular meetings with our partners in leisure, everyone active, improving the mix of activities for the residents of Ashfield. And what with the new facility for Kirkby and the new improved facility for Hucknall, things are looking up and are looking very rosy for the people of Ashfield. Also, during the terrible pandemic, I'd like to thank Paul and his housing section. It's good to see our housing options team have kept 35% more households from becoming homeless. And it is also good to see, of those who were rough sleeping or were threatened with rough sleeping, 40 households were offered accommodation, and the majority of whom have then been assisted into long-term accommodation. It's a good job, well done. And of course, we've got to thank the officers for the 99.66% of our tenants have had a gas safety check completed. And the percentages that have been missed, they've not been missed because we haven't failed to do them, but it's because of people self-isolating or shielding. But they've still been completed. But what a tremendous job that's been. The council's environmental team have kept up the good work of keeping our district clean and tidy. And our refuse service has kept up an excellent service, even under extreme pressures. The number of fly tipping incidents has increased, but I'm glad to see it is not being tolerated. It is also noticeable that the community safety section has been very busy on antisocial and nuisance issues. And a big thank you to the community protection officers in providing support to vulnerable people in delivering many food parcels and undertaking many welfare checks. And finally, thanks to everybody for in fact, many of the businesses have rung me up to say thank you. They are very grateful for the help this council has given them in distributing 1,700 grants to businesses, which is in excess of £17 million. A job well done, and thank you, Leader.
Thank you, John. Anyone else got any comments, questions, points on this item? Councillor Madden.
I don't know if you want a formal seconder to the recommendations, but there you go.
Thank you. That's it, Councillor Madden. I might just, before you stop talking, I might just draw your attention to page 15, bottom bullet point.
You don't have to keep telling me. I'm so proud of all this. I just wish Sylvia was still with us. The first thing I got lobbied with, and well done you. Thank you.
When you first got onto the Urban District Council?
It was first mooted in 1935, mate. Never mind KUDC.
That's what I'm talking about. Isn't that when you first got on?
No, just afterwards, you wrap up.
I'm very proud of it. And I think I have mentioned in a public meeting before that when Teresa and I were doing the video, she did have a little tear. It wasn't just me crying. Teresa is not as stony faced as she looks. There's a little glint of moisture in the eye. We were all quite emotional. Kirkby Leisure Centre's happening, and it's one of the statistics I'm so damn proud of. Right.
Congratulations to all involved. Brilliant job. And now I will keep quiet till it's my bit.
I've just found out the old Chad from 2008 where it said, where we first announced it, and the front page was, it's Kirkby and Splashfield. So, so it's finally coming, Splashfield. Anyway, I digress. If there's no other points or questions, I shall move to the vote. Thank you, Joe, for everything you've talked us through, and we'll take the vote. So all those in favour of accepting the recommendations as printed? I believe that's everybody. And 2 councillors missing, but we are passed. All right, thank you. I will move on to item 6, please, which is the social housing white paper. It's pages 25 to 34 on your agendas, and will be led by Councillor Hollis and Paul, please. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Leader. And I will apologise in advance that this is obviously a bit of a lengthy report. Quite rightly, I will go into some detail of what is going to be involved, just to kind of highlight what's already in the agendas in front of members and those watching at home. So by way of background, housing has always been a regulated sector, whether that be the original Housing Corporation, which became Tenant Services Authority under the Blair Brown government, and now established as the regulator of social housing as a subsection of Homes England. In the past, the regulator mainly focused on housing associations in relation to their privately arranged finance and governance arrangements. However, that changed with the tragic events at Grenfell some 3.5 years ago, where the government promised to look at how customers of social housing were treated and respected, which by implication now bring the councils and council tenants very much into the full spotlight of the regulator and its regulation. The Social Housing White Paper was released in November 2020, and the housing team have been digesting the detail and attending various seminars to outline and gain insight on the matter. Alongside this cabinet report, a similar report has been presented to leadership within the council, and an action plan will be drawn up. The white paper is divided into 7 sections, all of which have considerable implications on the housing department and the entire council, and it changes and emphasises in how we do services. These sections are health and safety, landlord performance, complaints, customer regulation, tenant voice, quality of homes and neighbourhood, and then the 7th chapter emphasises home ownership. Just to provide a slight detail on each of these, as a short word on each. So on health and safety, a responsible officer needs to be created to oversee and sign off the fact that the housing department is adhering to and also reporting on all aspects of the health and safety requirements within the Act. This will include components used in buildings, along with statutory testing and tracking of items such as fire risk assessments, Legionella, electric and gas, asbestos, and lift servicing. It is also required that such reports will not go to the various management teams, but also to elected members, as well to ensure appropriate oversight of the service. In addition, the fitting of carbon monoxide alarms to all social housing properties is also out for consultation. It will also bring the sector in line with the private rented properties. This investment will cost the council close to £500,000 and has already been modelled in the HRA's 30-year business plan. The second section is landlord performance. This is not just about the section's performance indicators, but also about its adherence to regulatory compliance. To this end, the further responsible officer is required to certify the compliance of the department and self-refer to the regulator if it is believed the section is either non-compliant or in danger of breaching one of the standards. And then the third section is about complaints, Mr. Chairman. So we will obviously be setting up a procedure where tenants can have a clear, defined remit of what this council and what our housing stock intends to do, and they can hold us to account. And a full procedure is now outlined of which they can complain, and right up to the ombudsman process. Consumer regulation is the fourth big change, which is also outlined in the minutes. And the tenant voice, which effectively gives all tenants a little bit more input into how they believe the council housing should be operated in more of a formal way, in a similar way to the tragedy at Grenfell, where they effectively weren't listened to by the authority there. So it gives them a clear pathway into decision making, much of which Ashfield Council does already, but it's legislating on other authorities that potentially aren't as good. And I think the rest really is outlined quite comprehensively in the paper, leader and members. So unless anybody's got any comments on what is really a procedural change in the housing department, I apologise, it's not as glitz and glam as what we've had in the rest of the report so far. But it will make positive changes in our housing stock and to the tenants and residents that ultimately live in them. Not only giving this council a clear stake of where our stock should be, but also giving tenants a very clear line in the sand of where their rights should be as well. So it's a real two-way street. Like I say, I think Ashfield Council was certainly a long way ahead of the curve compared to comparable authorities anyway. But we certainly welcome the challenge the government's presented us here, and certainly we'll be making every stride to comply with the Act as and when we should, leader. So I'll hand it back to you and any members that may have questions for both Paul and I.
I take it that you can't formally moving that report.
We'll do move that, leader, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any anything you'd like to add, Paul, before I throw it open, or?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say that it's a significant change in the way we're going to run the housing department, because it is a wide-ranging piece of regulation. So it's not just now about continuing to run a great service, it's also evidencing to an external body that we're fully compliant. We also need to evidence to tenants as well, and we also need to evidence to members who will play a big part in overseeing what we're doing. You can see in there's a brace of responsible officers required for signing off things like health and safety and compliance to regulation. So you can see how seriously the regulators taking this. Obviously, health and safety is always key, and we're really glad to increase our activity there and oversight there. And also important to point out that we're going to be inspected at least every 4 years. So that's as a minimum. And those who have been around long enough to remember the start of Kirkby Leisure Centre, I guess, will know what inspections mean. It's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, but we have got to be prepared for that. And also, one of the good things is as well, you'll see that there's quite a lot of investment required in stock as well. So we look forward to bringing in carbon monoxide alarms for all our tenants, which is a good thing. We're also going to increase expenditure on thermal efficiency across the stock. So that will help people on poorer incomes and basically increase people's quality of life. But that comes at the expense of around £10 million investment. And we're also looking to the future where many tens of millions of pounds will be invested in making our stock entirely carbon neutral over the next 20 to 30 years. So significant, wide-ranging consequences of failure are quite dire, but we're not in any doubt that we can achieve what we need to achieve. So here's a paper for noting, so please do note its contents and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any questions, comments? Anyone other than Councillor Wilmot? Councillor Wilmot then, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It's there's a lot of key implications in this new white paper, and looking at the new regulations on the paper, it's noticeable about the 7 core commitments that have been set out. I don't think any of these will cause us any undue concerns. We have some very professional officers in our housing section. In fact, the commitments are only what you would expect from a good housing provider anyway. We will need extra information on some of the audit trails. And what is most important is that the nominated senior officer or the senior person in charge keeps us all up to date with the statutory health and safety requirements, and also has regular meetings and consultations with tenants on health and safety matters. Very, very important side of the housing division. The decision to accept complaints made via social media channels will need some organising. I do believe that. And as it says, significant preparation will be required, which could be detailed and time consuming. And it seems to me, Leader, that the cost of providing these key new publishers will be costly. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are you seconding that report, John?
Yes, I'll second it, yes.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for Tom or Paul or comments? It is a huge paper, huge piece of work. I think not then. Okay. Do either of you, Tom, Paul, have anything to summate, or are we happy to move to the vote?
No, other than just to say, round it all off, as Paul and yourself has outlined, it is a huge piece of work, but something that the housing team will be stepping up to the challenge of completing. And although it's not exactly the glitz and glam that we're all used to, it does provide an opportunity not only to invest in the stock, whether that be with things like the carbon monoxide, whether it be with the environmental changes, bringing them up into line, but it all means improving the service for the tenants and residents, investing in the stock, and making sure we comply with the regulations, all of which are positive steps. So I'm very proud to present this report, and I'm sure Paul is too. And all I'd ask is members hold us to account on making sure we meet the targets that we've set ourselves within the report. Thank you.
Paul, any final words before I move to the vote?
No, nothing to add. Obviously, glitz and glamour comes when we pass the inspection with flying colours, which I hope to do so in the next 4 years.
Good. We hope you do as well. All right, so I'm moving that to the vote then. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of accepting the paper? Thank you. All right, I've changed my papers over. So we're moving on to item 7. Okay, exciting now. Proposed fees and charges changes 21-22. Item 7, it's pages 35 to 62, please, and Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief because, let's face it, all members who are attending this meeting have gone through this system with their individual portfolios. I would like to add my thanks to Pete Hudson and his team for the work coordinating all this, alongside the thanks that we owe them for all the work they've been doing with the grants, etc. So for the formal stuff, in accordance with sound financial practice, it is a requirement to undertake an annual review of fees and charges. The exercise is carried out as part of the budget process each year. Service areas were asked to review their fees and charges, taking into account a number of factors, including demand for services and competition from third parties. The proposed charges also reflect those set by the government, e.g. planning fees, etc. The proposals for 2021/22 are supported by the relevant portfolio holders, as I've said. It is planned to levy the new rates as soon as possible after the 1st of April 2021. Where fees and charges are planned to rise, the increased revenue from these proposals will contribute towards meeting inflationary costs. The report also includes charges to be levied by SLM for leisure activities, which are within the parameters of the council's contract. Key things to note are that there is no proposed increase in bulky waste collection. There is no proposed increase for car parking, and where we have existing 2-hour free parking within the district, this will remain. There is no proposed increase for garden waste collection charges, and there is no proposed increase in the in-district pest control charges. I therefore recommend that Cabinet agrees the proposed fees and charges for 2021/22 as set out in the appendix to the report. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, excitement? Pete, would you like to add anything before we move into full questions?
No, nothing from me, Chair. I think everything's been covered by Councillor Madden.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilmot, I think, wants to second the motion.
Yes, I would like to second this extremely informative paper. Again, well done to the members and officers that have been doing a lot of hard work in getting this together. Well, Leader, it cannot be said that we have raised fees and charges to boost our coffers. In fact, most services, there was no increase at all. And the ones we have increased have only been increased by the inflationary cost of service provision. And to a lesser extent, closing the budget gap. It is good to see that we have taken into consideration the market conditions and kept increases to costs incurred in delivering the service. And finally, it is good to see that we've taken into consideration the possibility of an adverse impact on demand if we raise fees too high. That's one of the issues that this unfortunately this COVID-19 has brought into the situation on the proposed fees and charges. People, it has not made people well off. It has made people struggle in most areas, and these fees and charges must be kept as basic as possible so that everybody can afford to use our services. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else? I can't see anyone, but given what John and Rachel have just said, I think this paper is a very useful precursor to what will be our upcoming budget, because it's clear that people are struggling across the district, and it's clear that this administration is on their side in every way possible. And the balance between the finances and the service delivery is a tightrope that we've walked very, very carefully, and I must say very ably, both from a member and officer point of view. But just to reiterate the bits that prove that this authority is on their side, this is the time when the government are reducing finances to local authorities, but also giving us lots more responsibilities. Our teams are working flat out with additional services, and because of COVID, we're providing all sorts of additional services. But at this point, we are, as Councillor Madden says, not increasing pest control for our residents in Ashfield. We are not increasing charges to green waste, the garden waste bin. We're not changing parking. In fact, we've introduced 2-hour free parking. We are not increasing bulky waste collections. As members will have seen, we have more and more flighty bin, but we're not increasing the charges to those things. But we are increasing charges to fines to those people who take our district for granted. You know, if you abandon a car and a vehicle, it's now going to cost you £500 in a fine. And as we said in earlier papers, about more fixed penalty notices. So this paper is what most people would think it's quite a dull functionary paper, is actually a real statement of intent that we've considered everything this council does to make sure it's on the side of our residents and not on the side of those people who take our district for granted. So I'm really pleased with it. I'm very, very please. And I know it's been a torturous piece of work to get to this, to try and balance the book. So again, thank you to Pete and Rachel and the teams for getting us to there. So if there's nobody else wishing to indicate, Councillor Madden, do you wish to summate in any way, or are you okay for me to move to the vote?
I think you have summated admirably. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, in that case, it's been moved and seconded, and we shall move to vote. All those in favour, please. Helen Ann, are you voting? In that case, we are unanimous in that. Thank you very much. And we are moving on swiftly to item 8, page 63 to 68, which is the rent setting paper for the forthcoming year. Portfolio holder, Councillor Madden again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, can't be quite as brief on this because there is a little bit of explanation to do. This report proposes to set an average rent increase of 1.5%. This being the September Consumer Price Index, CPI as we know it, of 0.5% plus 1% for all council house rents in 2021-22. To set a garage average rent increase of 1.5%, again CPI 0.5% plus the 1% for that year. To set a weekly amenity charge of £1.37, which is only an increase of 0.2 pence in the pound for 2021-22. 5, to set an increase for water charges of Brook Street Court of only 0.9% for 21-22. 6, to set an increase for service charges for the properties at Hawker's Place of Retail. Price, we are using the price index there, the RPI of December 2020 for the year 2021-22. Key points to note are council house rent increase. It's in line with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government policy statement on rents for social housing, published back in February 2019, and are also as planned for the 30-year housing revenue account business plan. A lower percentage of increase was considered for the housing rent option, but this would have had a detrimental effect on the HRA in the long term, leading to it being unsustainable. Garage rents. The proposed increase is to continue covering the increasing costs of maintenance and rental collection for council garage sites, consistent with the approach in previous years. The table in the report shows the weekly increase for each banding of garage. Amenity charges will continue to contribute to the cost of providing the following existing services, which do not fall under the provision of dwelling rents: grounds maintenance, estate management of housing open space, and community safety. The tenancy agreement already permits the council to charge a rent and levy other charges to cover the costs associated with tenancy and/or estate management. Community heating users will pay a weekly charge designed to cover the cost in the council of providing the heating. An analysis of forecast costs for the scheme shows that it is likely to be significantly over recovered in 2021-22 based on current service charge levels. This is due to the council entering into a new contract for the provision of utilities. Therefore, it is recommended that the charges for 21/22 be decreased, note decreased, by 5%. The table in the report shows you the decrease for every banding. Water charges at Brook Street Court, the weekly charge relates to 22 apartments only, and the charge depends on whether they are tenants of a 1 or a 2-bed unit. This is only for cost recovery against strict guidance from the Ofwat. It is recommended that the charge for 21/22 be increased by 0.9%, in line with the increase levied by Severn Trent for this past year. And lastly, service fee increase at Hawkers Place, Hucknall, 9 properties purchased in 2018. This is an annual charge payable by the residents to cover all maintenance costs provided by a private contractor of the wider estate. The RPI-linked increase in the service fee is increased in line with the agreement between the council and the housing development company. To not increase the service charge would mean the cost would be inappropriately subsidised by the HRA, in other words, other rent payers. I therefore propose the recommendations on page 63 as set out in your report and are open to questions and or comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Do I have any questions or comments on the report? Before doing so, Ruth, can we just, or Lynn, note a collective interest for any members of the Cabinet who are council tenants, who should note that down before voting. Thank you. Right, any questions or comments? I see Councillor Martin's unmuted, but I don't know if he wants to speak. Perhaps not. Councillor Wilmot, you wanted to second the report?
Yes, Leader, in seconding the report, I'd like to say that you have to remember that this council is once again keeping its rent increases to the barest minimum, following the guidelines with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government policy statement on rents for social housing. And of course, the garage rent and the amenity charge, plus the small number of properties with the communal heating charge, have a nominal increase to offset the increased costs of maintenance. And the residents who reside in the properties that pay communal heating charges will be glad to receive that decrease, which Rachel has announced. This is a paper that has been well thought out. Thanks again to Rachel, Pete and Paul for being involved in it. And as I say, I don't think the residents can make a lot of this situation in the respect that we have kept the prices as low as possible. And of course, don't forget, our rents are very, very low as far as the private sector is concerned. And we welcome this initiative to say that we're so pleased that we were able to keep these rents down. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, our rents are significantly lower than private rents. And of course, we want to keep social housing cheap as possible and delivering the best service as possible. But to do that, it needs to be financially stable. And given that the government reduced rent for 4 or 5 years ongoing, it was financially unstable for the housing revenue account to do essential repairs and maintenance ongoing over the course of the next few years if we didn't do this. So to be able to provide first-class services, we need to be able to pay for them, and we've done it in the most minor way, as you've said. Pete, Paul, do any officers wish to add anything? Pete?
Yeah, just really, it's on the back of the report that's going to be following and the one that Paul's already presented on the social housing white paper. Essentially, there's a lot of costs there that we still don't know about. So yes, it's an increase. It is a very small increase, 1.5%, but we have to recognise that we know we're going to have increased costs into the future that we're going to have to fund.
And I'll just reiterate that. I think the paper shows clearly we don't actually make any profit on the charges we bring in. It's purely about sustaining the housing revenue account. So although the rents are going up by 1.5%, we do know that post-Brexit, the cost of materials, imported materials, is going up substantially. So that will affect the cost over and above 1.5%, the cost of our repairs. We've got £500,000 going into carbon monoxide alarms, another 10 million going into thermal efficiency on properties, and then everything else we do balance the charges. So as the reduction in heating costs shows, thanks to good work of our procurement team, if we do break even or make a slight profit on what we're doing, we actually give that back to the tenants, and that's why you can see a 5% decrease in the utility costs during these colder months and the year ahead. So yeah, I'd like to thank members for bringing the paper forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Pete, any other members have any other comments before we shoot along the agenda? Okay, it's been moved and seconded, Lynn. I'm going to move forward to the vote. All those in favour, please. And I believe we are unanimous. Thank you. Right, we are moving. Oh my goodness. We are moving on again to another item 9, page 69 to 80 in the report, please. It's the HRA medium-term forecast, 2021 to 2025. Councillor Madden, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, my apologies. This will have to be slightly lengthy, owing to little explanations. This report updates members on the forecast financial position of the Housing Revenue Account, HRA, for the next 5 years. Housing authorities need to regularly perform and review resource utilisation exercises that broadly adopt the following principles. Rents must remain sufficient to service existing debt and maintain service delivery, and a statutory obligation exists to maintain the housing stock to a decent homes standard and housing health and safety rating system. The current position at the 31st of March 2020, the HRA balance was £36.8 million. A medium-term forecast has been derived from the HRA 30-year business plan. See Table 1 in the report, and this forecast is based on known assumptions as detailed in Table 2 in the report. HRA balances are currently forecast to diminish from the 36.8 to 24.4 million by the 31st of March 2025. A number of financial risks that could affect the forecast need to be considered. Rent income lower than forecast as a result of lower rent increases and/or non-payment of rent would have an adverse effect in the long-term sustainability of HRA. Table 3 shows you the efficiency gains from the introduction of a mobile housing repairs solution. These savings are built into the financial plan. Table 4 outlines the HRA capital programme expenditure over the medium-term forecast. This shows the major works programme to keep our housing stock to decent home standards and the other large schemes of new affordable housing developments over the next 5 years. The report then details the funding of the schemes through the HRA. Table 5 shows the right to buy receipts forecast and the qualifying capital expenditure requirement through to September 2023. An additional spend of £632,000 is required by 22-23, being £178,000 additional spend by the third quarter of the 22-23 financial year, and a further £454,000 by the fourth quarter of that financial year. This would require an additional use of HRA reserves by £442,000 by 22-23 to provide the 70% match funding used in the right to buy receipts. Sorry, my teeth aren't working this morning. Future implications are that the social housing green paper from government is looking for energy performance standards across the social housing sector, with the aim of as many social rented homes as possible being upgraded to EPC Band C by 2030 where practical, cost effective and affordable. A broad estimate is that the cost to achieve this for our council housing stock is in the region of £10 million. The figure may vary upon detailed analysis though. This has also been built into the HRA 30-year business plan across the years 2024-25 to 28-29, and the effect on the HR balances is shown in graph 1 of the report. This graph shows HRA balances over the life of the 30-year business plan. HRA is estimating to hold 38 million in balance by the end of this financial year. The current forecast movement in balances shows a general reduction through to 2036/37 to a deficit position of 4.8 million. The main driver of this is the Housing Stock Condition Survey, showing requirements of major works maintenance programme. A government social housing white paper published on the 17th of November 2020 includes proposals to introduce new primary building safety legislation and a new decent home standard. The full cost implications of this new building safety regulatory system is expected to be enacted in 2021. They are unquantifiable at this point and are therefore excluded from the HRA 30-year business plan forecast. We will produce update reports to bring forward at least annually and even more regularly if required to keep Cabinet appraised of the significant changes to the financial forecast. Therefore, I move the recommendation on, don't know what page number that is, that Cabinet notes impact of the 5-year financial forecast and the inherent financial risks within the current 30-year HRA business plan forecast. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Any questions, comments, officers, members on this item? Pete, do you wish to add anything before we go on?
Yeah, when Councillor Madden was presenting the report, she did make reference to the use of £12.4 million worth of reserves by March 2025, which is a significant amount, but equally, we have to remember that what that represents is investment in our housing stock. So it's a large amount, but it's for the benefit of the tenants to make sure that they have suitable housing to meet their needs.
Thank you, Pete. Tom, do you wish to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for delaying the technology there. But no, yeah, I think as Pete and Rachel outlined quite clearly there, a lot of this investment is directly in the stock. Of course, not only does this improve the quality of the tenants' lives, but it's an investment in our infrastructure and houses as well. This is bungalows, this is flats, this is family accommodation. And of course, members will be aware this is on top of the investment in the new build programme as well. So I think this is a real, well, I think as Paul probably picked me up on earlier, we like to do a bit of the glitz and glam. This is exactly that. You know, we're spending money that is making the quality of the housing we hold exceptionally good, more so than it already is. And this is something that I think we can't ignore that other authorities, leader and cabinet, aren't doing. You know, only our neighbours in Broxtowe have a substantially lesser offering than us. And I think really a lot of it's down to the stewardship of the leadership of this council, but also the officers who put great time and effort into making sure that we don't just tick the boxes of tenants and housing in the district. We actually make sure they're as good as they possibly can on the budgets that we hold. And when you're talking over 7,000 properties, leader, varying different designs and styles, and we're able to not only meet our obligation to them, i.e. with emergency fixes, making sure they've all got new roofs, boilers within the programme, but also rebuilding extra properties, Mr. Chairman. I think it's something we should be very proud of. So I know it's something that Paul and I are both very proud, and I'm sure you are too.
Absolutely. Take it you're second in the report, Tom.
Second in the report.
Okay. Any other members or officers wish to add anything? Councillor Wilmot, please.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I'd like to thank Rachel and Pete for a very informative financial forecast before us, and also the information provided by the Housing Division to make this paper looked correct in its pronunciations. Anyway, thank you, Leader. The COVID-19 pandemic is certainly taking its toll on the housing revenue account medium-term financial forecast. Of the number of financial risks that we are discussing today, the three issues that concern me today are the non-payment of rent due to the complications of this terrible pandemic, the significant reductions in stock due to right to buy sales, which could seriously hurt us long term, and of course the new government white paper, which could increase the cost of management and maintenance costs to a level very difficult to sustain during these trying times. So it is essential that a review of the long-term plan for housing services is undertaken urgently. It is good news that we are building 59 new properties in the near future, of course, which has already been said, and a further 16 are under consideration. The not so good news, we are losing 46 properties per annum on right to buy based on prior year averages. The graph shown on page 69 shows how the RHA balances will look in years to come. So that is why a full review is essential. We all await the clarification of the social housing white paper, which has many significant proposals, which will have serious or could have serious cost implications to this authority. Yes, it's a paper forecast that we don't know a lot about. Some of the issues will come in the near future, hopefully, to let us know where we are on this issue. But we must make sure that a full review is taking place over the next couple of years. Cheers.
Thank you, John. Anybody else, any points or questions? Councillor Madden, do you have anything to summate?
No, I think the report says it all, Chair. We are building social housing, which is welcomed. But on the other hand, we do have this ongoing pandemic, which could impact on rent collection, etc. So I commend the report, and it's for your information. So over to you.
All right, thank you. Well, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll move to the vote then, please. So all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Right, so then we move on to item 12, pages 115 to 122 in your agendas. It's the Ashfield Health and Wellbeing Partnership Strategy for the next 4 years. Happily, it doesn't contain a big picture of an apple anymore. Councillor Barsby, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, the apple's gone. First of all, I'd like to recommend to Cabinet 3 notes. Note the significant progress made against the health and happiness theme in the Council's corporate plan. 2, approve the development of health and happiness strategy 2021 to 2025 and endorse the framework of the strategy set out in this report. And thirdly, delegate authority to the Place and Communities Director to sign off for the final strategy. Can I just also add, Leader, that the Ashfield Health and Wellbeing Partnership, formerly Active Ashfield, became the lead for the Be Healthy, Be Happy theme of Discover Ashfield in 2019. It has a multi-agency membership with formal terms of reference. Through the delivery of the previous Active Ashfield Lifestyle Strategy 2017 to 2021, there have been a number of key successes, including the Leisure Transformation Programme, the introduction of Feel-Free Good Families, work to tackle food poverty, support for those living with dementia, targeted working in priority places, and much, much more. The new health and happiness strategy has been developed through the consultation with many local partners and the analysis of a number of data sources. The strategy identifies the need to continue to work together, pooling resources, knowledge and expertise to tackle the health inequalities that exist across Ashfield. The strategy highlights 4 priority groups that exist across the district, and these are as follows: low-income families, adults with multiple disadvantage, those living with long-term condition or disability, and those impacted negatively by COVID-19. And the 3 priority places are Coxmoor in Kirkby, Leamington in Sutton, Broom Hill, Butlers Hill in Hucknall. The strategy aligns closely to the corporate plan, focusing on a number of targeted health and activities to improve health and quality of life for Ashfield residents. Leader, and I'll move recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Barsby. Do I have anybody who wishes to add anything? Teresa?
Thank you, Chair. It's been a significant work that's happened under the health and happiness theme within the corporate plan. Just to add to some of the key successes, which are again significant, the word that's been used a lot today in relation to transformation programme is the free activities programme that we didn't manage to get into the report. So we've been doing a number of free activities across the council, mainly within the leisure centres. So free swimming and free activities, and happy that Cabinet are agreeing to support that programme moving forward as part of the leisure transformation and the new contract with the leisure provider. So a significant amount of money has been put aside to support the actual Everyone Active, who is our new provider, to deliver against this theme in the new contract. So I just wanted to add that because it wasn't included in the report. And I thank Councillor Barsby for spearheading this report and working with the partners moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Teresa. Any members, any questions or comments? Councillor Wilmot wants to second the report.
Yes, Leader, in seconding this report, I'd first of all like to thank Keir and Teresa for all the tremendous work that's been done on this strategy. And it's so good to see us working in partnership with other organisations on this Ashfield Health and Wellbeing strategy. It just shows how far we have come by the successes as shown in the document. The Leisure Transformation Programme will see us improve, of course, at the leisure facilities across the district, with a new leisure centre in Kirkby, a new pool in Hucknall, and capital investment at the Lammas Leisure Centre in Sutton. I fully support the Feel Good Food initiative in supporting our residents to eat healthily, and that we have been involved in reducing food poverty by working with the food banks over 350 families and individuals are now receiving food parcels. And I also support the Feel Good Families project that has seen over 500 families engage in positive activities together in Ashfield. And I like the idea of the target area working in understanding what matters to people in those areas. I think we all welcome the idea of working with the Ashfield and Mansfield Dementia Partnership and all the good work it does. I welcome this consultation that has taken place over the new strategy and fully support this document. It is a tremendous accolade that we should be very proud of, and thanks everybody all that's been involved in it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I must endorse your comments. Any other questions, comments, anything? No, Councillor Barsby, do you wish to summate on anything?
No, I'm happy to just move to vote, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and thank you for all the work on that. I know Councillor Deakin's particularly happy now that there's no pictures of fruit, is because she thinks a Terry's chocolate orange is one of your 5 a day. But we are moving on to the vote. So all those in favour of accepting the report, then please. Councillor Hollis, Martin, are you voting? We're taking it without you. We've passed that vote. Thank you. And then, I'm sure as Councillor Ralph would like me to say, last but not least, quite a mundane, boring report, really. Not much to say, just a bit of a functionary thing. Hardly any work gone into it at all. But I know, in seriousness, probably the largest scale investment to come to Ashfield in my time as a councillor of 14 years on this authority, spearheaded by Councillor Ralph. So we were particularly lucky to sneak him in with a small majority in that by-election. And then the fantastic team led by Sarah Daniel, Paul Crawford, and everybody that Teresa's been managing over there. This is a mammoth team effort. I know Carol and Teresa are incredibly proud, but I will hand over to Matt to begin his waxing lyrical about future high streets funding. For those of you looking at your papers, it starts at page 123. Thank you, Councillor Ralph.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Council has secured a £6.27 million from the Government's Future High Streets Fund. The fund was a highly competitive bid scheme open to all local authorities in England and was first announced in December 2018. Its aim is to address the challenges being faced by high streets, which was already a critical issue, but now even more so in the shadow of COVID. Ashfield Council was permitted by the government to submit only one bid and chose Sutton due to the challenges being faced. It has taken 2 years to secure the funding and it's been a long journey. An expression of interest was submitted in March 2019, and in July 2019, the council was notified that we'd not been selected in round 1 of the process. However, MHCLG recognised the strength of the bid and invited the council to submit under the later round 2. In November 2019, a rough order of magnitude was submitted with draft costings for the selected 5 major projects. In May 2020, the public consultation was undertaken with the projects as part of the Towns Fund consultation, and a seminar was held for all local Sutton Cabinet members. At the end of July 2020, our final bid for the 5 projects was submitted to MHCLG, with clarifications submitted in October. Successful bids were announced on the 26th of December 2020, with 72 successful bids awarded a share of £831 million. Ashfield's bid of 9.2 million was allocated 6.27, one of 57 high streets which had not received the provisional funding offer, which is less than the amount they bid for. It's not clear how many councils in total entered bids, but the feedback is that to even get a partial award is a huge achievement. For example, we were deeply saddened that Mansfield were unsuccessful in their Future High Streets Fund bid. The projects included in the Future High Streets Fund bid were renovating the existing Sutton Community Academy Theatre, creating a new foyer entrance building with cafe and bar. The facilities will be used by the Academy in the daytime and then open to the public in the evenings and weekends for theatre, cinema and live music events. We're going to be developing a Sutton makerspace and business hub. The makerspace is for anyone who lacks the funds and/or space for tools at home, and will be able to pay a small membership fee to access woodworking, metalworking, sewing machines, 3D printers, laser cutters, etc. This can be for hobbies, sense of community, learning a new skill, or starting and building a business. We're going to be purchasing and refurbishing vacant units down on Low Street to give them a new purpose on the ground floor and convert the upper floors into high quality apartments. Transformation of the derelict site off Fox Street behind the Lloyds Bank to create a new car park and public space that provides connectivity between Asda and Portland Square to attract more people into the town centre. The space can be set up also for a venue for pop-up food stalls. And on the marketplace, we have plans for building a new building that would provide space for community and high quality residential apartments. We're now required to review the business case and resubmit by the 26th of February, demonstrating how we will amend our plans to fit the funds available. Now more than ever, our towns need investment. The Future High Streets Fund projects complemented the 17 projects included in the Kirkby and Sutton Towns Fund bid, which we'll be submitting at the end of this week. Kirkby and Sutton could receive up to £25 million each for to fund plans to create thriving and revitalised towns, as well as projects to support and create new businesses and skills opportunities and improve and develop the area's sports facilities and visitor economy. For too long, this area has been left neglected by successive governments. The award of the Future High Streets Fund money shows the strength of the team we have here at Ashfield and our ability to change this area for the better. And I'd want to once again like to thank them publicly for their incredible hard work. Together, we've put together an excellent Towns Fund bid, and if this government is serious about its levelling up agenda, then we urge them to grant that in full. Looking forward, we're keeping an eye closely on the newly announced Levelling Up Fund, as we're particularly keen to look at what further funding we can secure for Ashfield, with a particular focus on Hucknall, as the government excluded Hucknall from the Towns Fund bid. Thank you, Chair. More than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very happy, obviously, to second the report that you've moved and open it up to discussion, adulation, commendation from members. But before I do so, I think that for record of the journey and the piece of work that's taken place, members should be drawn to page 124, which are the key dates of the journey that this council's undertaken for the securing of the Future High Streets Fund. And it just shows to us and reiterates to the public what a long and arduous piece of work this is. Nobody turned up and asked for some money. There was hours and hours and hours of officer time, of member meetings, of discussions, of ideas, of people like the Discover Ashfield board poring over this, hours and hours over months and months running into years, where this council, and I say council meaning members and officers, created a robust case that was very deserving of the funding. And that's why so many councils sadly lost out, as Matt said, like our neighbours. Our council did the due diligence, and with the great work of our officers and the careful scrutiny and ambition of members, we created a plan that we should be damn proud of. And this page shows back to December 2018 how long we have been working hard to secure vital funding for our town centres. We should be very, very proud that we got as much as we did. Of course, we're tinged with disappointment we didn't get everything we asked for, but rarely do you. But so many of our friends across the country didn't get anything. So we are should be incredibly proud of the work we put in, and shows that all of those hours that we sat talking and working hard were worth it, because we've come to this point now where we can talk about the exciting part, spending it and delivering some real change. So I've always been quite excited. I'm very good at expressing my passion for how we transform Ashfield. But I think what I need to do clearly today is express my thanks to our officers and to Matt, the members who have worked on this, the teams over in Sarah Daniels' team over there, who have put just countless hours in. And thank you. This is going to be an incredible next few years as we start transforming our town centres. So I'm throwing that open. I see Councillor Madden, then Councillor Wilmot, and I think Councillor Deakin nodded, but I'm not sure. Councillor Madden, please.
Thank you, Chair. You alluded earlier in this meeting to the length of service I have been honoured to provide to the residents of Ashfield. Yes, over 2 decades of watching this council with apathy, and backstabbing and arguing and raising councillors' allowances but not producing much more back to it, and have despaired. But in just over 2 years since Ashfield independence took over under your leadership, what a difference. We have enthusiasm for thinking outside the box, etc., etc. And all I can do is say thank you to yourself for picking Matt Relf for that by-election with that very small majority, slightly increased at the actual district council elections, because he has proven to be an excellent addition to this council. I would like to continue my thanks to Sarah Daniel. She's always been a good one as far as I'm concerned. So well done, guys. It is so nice to be awake, alert, and looking to the future with promise on the horizon for improvements to the quality of life of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. I'm not sure he's doing a good enough job, actually, because I think there was still something like 4 or 5% of people who didn't vote for him this time. So it's obviously not good enough. We need to do better. Councillor Wilmot, please.
Right, thanks, Leader. First of all, I would like to thank Matthew personally and all his team in obtaining this funding. It will certainly help to revitalise Sutton Town Centre. It's been a monumental task. I mean, it's well documented, the amount of hours and so forth that has been put in by him and the team and other officers that have done. And, you know, and of course, Sarah, the work that she's done as well in the place team and the rest of the place team, it's been absolutely fabulous. We should obviously accept this funding and the idea to rework the business case to reflect the level of funding that has been awarded. If you look on page 124, it just sets out how much hard work has gone into this project. And of course, only 72 bids were accepted out of the many hundreds that were put in all over the country. And this funding will go, as I say, a long way to boosting the town. Having seen the proposed new initiatives for the town centre in Sutton, these projects look very exciting. And I know the people of Sutton will look forward to the schemes coming to fruition. Just like to say thank Matthew for the idea of looking at funding for the Hucknall. For Hucknall, extra infrastructure is certainly required urgently with all these extra houses, as I've said. And of course, part of the money, if it ever came to fruition, could go into helping with a new surgery that is absolutely essential to the people of Hucknall. And thanks very much, as I say, to everyone for all the hard work that you've done, and to Matthew, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Deakin, did you indicate?
I'm not quite sure I can thank Matt anymore today. He's had quite a lot, to be fair. He's not going to get back out his shed. But it's been a tremendous piece of work. It's gone on, and I'm really, really excited to start seeing the difference, start actually seeing all the hard work that so many people have put in behind the scenes to actually start seeing it come to life. Sutton Town Centre is so in need of this. It's just a little bit of revigoration, a little bit of life putting back in there. I must admit, really, really excited for this, and well done to all the teams involved.
Thank you, Samantha. All right, any other people? I know the Chief Executive wants to, but I'm going to bring you in last, Carol, if nobody remembers, so you can summate. I don't think there are any others, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leader. I've worked in regeneration and economic development most of my career, and this has been the longest bidding scheme that I have ever worked on. Launched just before Christmas in 2018, so that predates any of you guys being the administration of this council. So, and the key dates had to be pruned down, because otherwise we could have gone on pages and pages of what we've done on Future High Streets Fund. There's been a lot of people had a hand in this successful bid, officers led by Sarah, and members led by Matt, and Matt really has led from the front on this one, but also a lot of officers in a lot of teams, not just the place team, but the finance team, the legal team. When we started, we had the help of the Shared Regeneration Service with Mansfield officers. There's huge amounts of people had a hand in this, plus members, ward members, who gave us their thoughts and views and ideas for projects. So dozens and dozens of people have had a hand in this successful bid. So really, it's my thanks as well, because it has been a long and arduous process, but we've kept at it, and because we had to for Sutton and for Ashfield. Don't just look at this as 6.27 million, because what it essentially does now is this provides us £6.27 million worth of match funding for other schemes, because it's something that Ashfield has really been disadvantaged through in the past. We just haven't had the match funding to be able to pull ambitious schemes together, but now we have. So yes, 6.2 million is absolutely fantastic, but it's what that brings with it that I think will be even more significant than that. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Carol. And as you know, I would never correct you, except just this once. About the timeline, just slightly, I absolutely agree. But just for clarity, I became leader of this authority on the 27th of April 2018. So although we didn't win outright control till after this date, we were still in the steering line, as you must remember, because you were getting frustrated with me when we were having long meetings about making sure we were bidding for this. But you're right, it's been a long piece of work, and we should be incredibly proud as a senior team of members and officers who have pulled all the stops out to make sure we get this cash and really deliver some changes. So very, very proud of it. Now then, I don't see any other members indicating, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Relf if he wishes to summate anything, and then I'm going to walk around and phone Catherine so that she can immediately share this paper with the press and tell them what a fantastic job we are evidently doing. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to reiterate everyone else's thanks for the team effort on this. It really has been a huge number of people working on this and giving up their time, both voluntary people involved in the Discover Ashfield board through to the paid officers who, quite frankly, have been working ridiculous hours to work on this and the Towns Fund stuff. And it really is worth singing the praises of Sarah Daniel and Paul Crawford on this. They are working their socks off on this one, and the proof of their efforts is in the pudding, and this sort of success is very much down to the whole team effort. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, with that, I'm going to take a vote just to acknowledge the paper. So all those members in favour, please. We are, of course, unanimous in that. I believe that draws us to the close. Yes, of course, we save the best for last. And thank you all for your time and indulgence this morning, and see you all very soon. Goodbye.